right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our weekly media briefing. The Premier is here with the MECs. And again, without any further waste of time, I would like to ask the Premier to come and speak to you. After the Premier's remarks, we will then take questions, or MEC Lesufi will add on the measures that we are putting in place to get ready for the reopening of the schools. And then we will take your questions.
Once more, good morning, ladies and gentlemen from the media. Welcome to our weekly briefing on our work on COVID-19 in Gauteng Province. We always start with indicating the work we are doing along all the pillars, our 6 pillars, but today we will brief you on only some of them, not all of them. Starting with an update on our work with regard to the comprehensive health response. We do an update. You know the national figures announced by the minister yesterday. We always give you an indication of where our province is relative to the rest of the country. The country is at 40,792 confirmed cases. And out of that, there are 18,633 recoveries, and deaths are at 848, and the number of tests. And out of that, the new cases. We also always take the national picture and break it down into provinces to indicate where our province is relative to the others. That in slide that had the number of confirmed cases put differently in terms of the proportions of the contribution of each province to those confirmed cases. You will see that Gauteng Province, in terms of the confirmed cases, Gauteng Province contributes 12% to all the confirmed cases. This is a cumulative figure since patient 0 in the Republic, which was on the 5th of March, and patient 0 in Gauteng was the 7th of March. You will also see that in terms of active cases, so there's confirmed cases, which is a cumulative figure, and then there's active cases, which is minus deaths, as well as minus recoveries. In Gauteng Province, in terms of the active cases, contributes 14% to the active cases relative to the rest of the country. Let's come back to the province specifically. Every week when we brief you, we also share with you what's happening to the curve in our province. You would see that for some time now, our curve is inclining, and it means we are getting the number of daily cases more than we have had before, even before the national lockdown, and I'm going to be giving some interpretation to this. We have said to you we would like to flatten that curve. The graph that shows positive cases, we would like it to be flatter, and when it steeps, it means we are getting more cases. Together with that graph of positive cases, when it steeps, you must know that the active cases are increasing. And if you look at that graph that deals with active cases, for a long time we have been saying to you that we would like to see the number of active cases going down, getting fewer and fewer. So you would see that particularly from the end of May, the graph on the active cases is inclining. It's going up. And you, again, when it goes up together with the positive cases, naturally, the number of recoveries will be fewer. The graph we want to see going up is the one of recoveries, to a point where it actually crosses over the one of positive cases. So you now see that our recoveries, we have had a period when our recoveries were actually more, because we have gotten new cases in a short space of time. In the last 2 weeks in particular, we have gotten a lot of new cases, and we always explain to you, where are these new cases coming from, where are they coming from, and what is happening in those areas, and what are you doing. So that's why, for the first time in our report, we present an update where you see that the number of active cases are more than the number of recoveries. That's where those graphs cross. And as I say, it's an indication that we are getting more new cases than we have ever received before, because the new cases are what they are. They are new. You can't have recoveries out of new cases. It takes at least 14 days to get recovery. So we have gotten more new cases in the last 2 weeks, almost on a daily basis, than we have ever had before. So let's again look at what's happening in terms of the breakdown in percentage terms. Last week when we briefed you, that's where we were. We always say to you, last week we were there in terms of the recoveries. We had more recoveries. Last week we had 61% recoveries. We had 38% active cases. Death last week was still 1% at 31. You would see the significant change now. The number of recoveries have gone down as a result of the new cases. That explanation I was giving. As a result of the new cases, we have more active cases. So when we have more active cases, we end up having fewer recoveries. The picture will change depending on what happens between now and a week from now with regard to that. You will see that the number of deaths reported by the minister as of yesterday, the number was still 33, but we had reported as a province 4 additional deaths. There is a process, it's a national process to verify that we are including that in the number, that we have 4 additional deaths. We have reported those, the MEC has ensured that those were reported. He also briefed the minister this morning. We are including them because they have been reported, although by the time the national numbers came out, those 4 deaths were not included. But we are at 37 as of today. 37 fellow citizens have passed on, and may their families be consoled, and may their souls rest in peace. That is still quite a lot. So basically here we're showing you that over the last 7 days we have had 1,516 cases in 7 days. That's the largest growth we have ever had in 7 days. And I think the message we want to send out there is in the next slide, where we're going to be showing you that we're now getting on the daily case reportage has increased quite substantially, which is what I will show you in the next slide. In the next slide, we show you that if you start from patient 0, the number of new daily cases, daily positive cases, in other words, new cases on a daily basis. We give an indication that just at the point of the national lockdown, we registered the highest before now. That was 124 cases on the 28th of March, just around, in fact, it was on the day of the lockdown, but the report was given the following day. That's the 28th. So just at the point of the lockdown, we had the largest number of daily cases. Between the lockdown and just before the 20th of May, up to mid-May, from the national lockdown in March, on the 27th, up to mid-May, we have been able to maintain a daily average growth rate of just around 50 cases on average. And that was over a long period of time. When there were days sometimes we would get even 9 cases, and then on other days we'll get 80 cases. But on average, right up to around the 20th, in fact, that's the 20th to be precise, up to the 23rd of May, our caseload, new positive cases were much lower. That's why we always say the lockdown has worked for us. It is not something that we're just saying without evidence. It is borne by this evidence. And then we went back, just around the 23rd, we went back to 112 cases on a daily basis, 100 cases. And the 25th, we shot up to 260 cases. That's when the specter of the West Rand mines began to emerge. So the explanation of that 260 cases a day, it's just when the West Rand, the mining areas in the West Rand became a key area of concern, and we have shared this with you. And now you would see that essentially from the 25th of May, we have had on average, over 150 cases. In the last 3 days, we have been reporting cases over 200. In fact, since the 29th of May, we have been reporting cases again over 200. There's a unique day that we had 45 cases. And that's the trend we think will continue as we move forward, that we are now reporting on a daily basis cases above 200. And we will possibly get to a point where the number of cases will be above that and then go to 300 a day. And again, the fundamental question is to understand, so where are these cases coming from? And what is happening in those areas? And what is the response? What is an appropriate response from the provincial government, from particularly a health perspective, but also interventions on food security, interventions regarding the hygiene measures in those areas, social distancing, what's happening in those areas. So if you want to understand in terms of regions, if we say where are these cases coming from in terms of regions, you will see that Johannesburg has got 389 active cases, 389 active cases. The total number of cases in Johannesburg is 1,556, but the recoveries are many there, 1,152, that is 1,152. So the number of active cases in Johannesburg have doubled. So that 389 active cases is quite a lot. Ekurhuleni, the number of active cases have also gone up. The Ekurhuleni number of active cases is usually around 140, 145, 147. It's now 190. Tshwane, the number of active cases has usually been less than 100. They are now 143. But an important an important difference is what is happening in the West Rand. So the West Rand has a 244 number of active cases as a result of that outbreak that we experienced from the 21st of May. That's when the outbreak happened in the mines, the cluster outbreak happened in the mines. So the West Rand in terms of is the second in terms of the number of active cases. And that's why we said a week before last that it meets the requirement of being a hotspot, and we have been treating it as such as the provincial government in all the interventions we have been making. And then that's basically where on the 28th of May, I want you to see what has happened where we are immediately as of today. So you would see again that the number of active cases in Johannesburg is now 992. The number of active cases in Ekurhuleni is 425. I was giving you the numbers of last week when we did the last briefing. From 389, now we have 992 active cases in Johannesburg. In Ekurhuleni from 190, now we have 425 active cases. In Tshwane, we had 143, now we had 285. In almost each of those areas, the number of active cases have doubled. But look at what happened with the West Rand. Again, the active cases are now 372 from that 244 of last week. So that's essentially an indication in the terms of districts, but let's go to the granular level. So ask another important question, but yes, in Johannesburg, in Ekurhuleni, in the West Rand, where exactly in those areas? And how many cases are we having? Now you would see that we have a full breakdown of the hotspots at sub-district level. Sub-district level, we go into a district and say, this is the heat, this is where the heat is, this is where we actually need to dedicate interventions in those areas. So what would be our big concern? In Johannesburg, we've got the following areas that would be our big concern in terms of the number of active cases. There is an area that is from Rosebank to the CBD of Johannesburg and to Mayfair. That would be an area of great concern to us. Now, we have there 142 active cases. We also have an area in the parts of Johannesburg that include Rodiport, Florida, Constantia Kloof, Northgate, that has 102 active cases. So anything at that level, once it gets to 100, yes, we watch those cases from 10, but when it gets to 100, it becomes a big concern for us. And then we also have another area in Johannesburg. These are the sub-districts of Johannesburg where we have 101 cases. That is in the Sandton, Alexandra, Orange Grove, Wynberg area. We have 101 active cases. But look at what's happening in the inner city in particular. We have 229 active cases. So the inner city of Johannesburg, so this week as we speak, the inner city of Johannesburg has become a hotspot for us as we speak. So it has got the largest number of active cases in Johannesburg, the inner city of Johannesburg. If you go to Ekurhuleni, okay, let's look at Tshwane first. The area in Tshwane would be from the CBD of Tshwane, Pretoria West, up to Atteridgeville. We have 77 cases. In Tshwane, 77 is a lot. We have said before, we were very concerned with the north and northwestern areas of Tshwane, from Soshanguve, Mabopane, Karankua, Winterveld. You would see the number of active cases in those areas are much fewer now After the interventions we have made, we saw in 1 week increases in the number of cases. We marshaled our resources there, including those, the tests we did at the shopping malls, especially Soshanguve shopping mall, and the mobilization of the resources to go and do, get a public education in those areas. So at the moment, we are happy with that area in Tshwane, that is the Soshanguve, Mabopane, Garangua, Winterveld area, but we don't want to lower the guard. So we would be worried in Tshwane around the area from the CBD to the Pretoria West right up to Atteridgeville. But there would also be another area in Tshwane that would be of concern to us, that would cover Olivenhout-Bosch, Lodium, Danville. No, in fact, it is Olivenhout-Bosch, Eldorraine, Littleton, and Roy Hayes-Kral. That's the Centurion area. We've got 63 cases in the Centurion area. So in Tshwane, at the moment, the number of cases that are preoccupying us is the CBD to right up to Atteridgeville, Saltsville, and the Centurion area. Centurion was the hotspot right from the beginning, but even in Centurion, it is now different places other than the ones that were the hotspots right at the beginning. So that would be our concern in Tshwane. If you look at Ekurhuleni, we have always said to you, Ekurhuleni North 1, which would be the areas that would include Kempton. North 1 is Kempton Park, Tembisa, right up to Winnie Mandela, would be Ekurhuleni North 1. Combines Kempton Park and portions of Kempton Park and Tembisa. We have 106 active cases there. So that's where the increase has come. But one of the interventions we put in Ekurhuleni North 1 has been to do the test at the outbreak at a factory called Farmwise. We have been able to contain the impact of that cluster outbreak there on the number of people, especially in the Tembisa settlements, including Winnie Mandela and across into Johannesburg, Ivory Park. We've been able to contain that there are not too many people. We have done testing there, we have done tracing. In fact, in all these areas, the critical thing is once people test positive, our teams, tracing teams, have to find their contacts, ensure that those contacts can either self-quarantine or self-isolate, or we will then take them into our quarantine sites. The second area in Ekurhuleni would be the Alberton, Germiston area. There are 95 cases there. If you combine Alberton, Germiston area, it would be the second area of focus. Then in Sidibeng has 47 cases. In the overall scheme of things, it may appear small, but it is a region that has been green. Green means it has largely been a COVID-free region. 47 is not something you can ignore. Those 47 active cases, we would be interested in where they are. So we don't want an increase of a region that is principally largely COVID-free. Sidibeng is one of those areas where we even have a whole municipality that has got cases that are just 7 active cases. Lesedi in Sidibeng it's amongst the lowest number of active cases, only 7 active cases. It's almost COVID-free, and MEC, we must declare those areas in our province where we have had cases and there's full recovery and there are no new infections, we want to declare them fully COVID-free. But when you have 47 cases that are largely in Mfuleni, we would be monitoring. And then go back to the West Rand. So the West Rand is our area of great concern at the moment. And where in the West Rand? You see principally Yes, in Mogale City, we do have 71 cases, active cases there. But the big area of concern is really in Merafong, in the mining areas of Merafong. Rand West, yes, we've got a few cases there, 23. And actually, we know there is a mine in Rand West. Is that Harmony? Yes, where we have recently just gotten. Harmony used to have no cases. In fact, there was only one case when we met with the mines. They have reported a few cases there. But most of those Western cases are, what did we do after Mponeng mine of Anglo Gold Ashanti had positive cases? We went into the community because we want people to understand our testing strategy. So we looked at the mine, yes, all the workers there who had contact with those who tested positive were tested. Over 600 workers were tested. Those who tested positive were quarantined. But we got into the community to search for their contacts, because that's where the critical, and then we put in place an elaborate testing machinery in Kokosi. And that's where we got, in that community, we got a lot more positive cases because of the interaction between a workplace and the community. So we always do that. If a workplace tests positive, we look at where those workers come from. So we must go back to their families and their relatives in that area and find them, and we put them into quarantine, essentially. So these numbers would be coming out of that. We think in a week's time we'll be monitoring. Having traced all those contacts and having tested as many of the contacts as we have done, and just people in the community there, we will reach the level of comfort. So essentially, when we say to you, which we said 2 weeks ago, there is a changing geography of hotspots, we say to you, what may be a hotspot now doesn't mean it will be a hotspot in 2 weeks' time in particular. And often it's a result of containment measures. And it's very important that our containment measures are understood, fully understood, actively tracing everybody who has come into contact with the place and anybody who has tested positive, but also general suspicion that a particular community may be very vulnerable. We only do that kind of general community testing in a community where we think the chance that everybody here may have come into contact with the people who have tested positive is very high. We have never just had a general since the introduction of our hotspot strategy. So you will then see this translates. These are the hotspots. This is where the new cases come from. But if you look at them, those you then check in the last 7 days. If you look at the 1,500 cases that have occurred over the last 7 days, where have they come from? We give you another breakdown now over a 7 days view. We give you not just what has happened in 1 day. So you would see that in Johannesburg, basically the inner city, the largest number of cases in the last 7 days, 146 of those came from the inner city of Johannesburg. And you'd see the rest is like that. And then in Ekurhuleni, the largest number of cases over the last 7 days, which is 69, would have come from Ekurhuleni North 2, which is, as I said, is the Germiston, essentially is the Alberton-Germiston area. We have told the story of the West Rand. We know, you and I know in the last 7 days where those cases would have come from as we were doing more testing in that area. We also give a further breakdown, ward by ward. We also have the top 20 wards in Gauteng. This is just to give the public information for them to know. So which are the areas, the wards? We earlier on were talking about the specific communities. We give you this information to indicate, also indicate the growth from the 23rd of May to the 31st of May in the different wards. We share with you that in Johannesburg, in Merafong, in Ekurhuleni, in Tshwane, in the West Rand. That's information you'll always value. And then we geo-map these wards. That's like precisely where they are located. You can see the area that is getting a bit darker would be where we have larger numbers. And you can see on that geo-map that the hotspots, the areas that were hotspots 2 weeks ago are no longer as dark on our map. And that's an indication of the lesser number of new infections and adding into that more recoveries. We have already said to you that the West Rand, Merafong, would have high density of new cases and active cases. The areas in the Val, it would largely be from Orange Farm, Everton's Bukeng area, the south of the CBD of Johannesburg, the inner city, including the Mayfair area and the southern parts, and certain portions of Soweto. That's Dobsonville, Doornkop areas, and we linked those also. We found that the infections in those areas are kind of linked to mining activity. Some of the workers who come from the mines where we have picked up these cases. We're able to trace that when we do contact tracing about the people who are getting infections here. What may be the source? The regional breakdown, I think I've given you this already. I would like to go to the next slide. Our immunization, flu immunization program is continuing. We always emphasize it is a targeted program. Flu immunization is for our health workers. It's for the elderly, it's for the children, it's for pregnant women, people who have chronic diseases, including those with HIV and AIDS. Every week we give you an increase in the number. We are at 282,415 people who have been immunized so far. Our screening has increased. We're continuing to do screening. And I think you would hear in the national discourse that screening is continuing to be important because of the difficulty with the number of tests available, but also with the delays in testing screening. I've listened to what our colleagues in the Western Cape are saying. Initially the emphasis was less on screening there. We have always done screening here. We have always done testing. You will see our testing numbers. But as the pandemic progresses, in each province and across the country, it always requires us to relook into those strategies. That's why our testing and tracing strategy in the hotspots includes social mobilization now at community level to increase the level of public education in those communities through our ward-based COVID-19 teams. So we have surpassed the 6 million. You would see. I actually know that we are at 6.6 million as of this morning. So we said in there we are saying 6.3. The latest new reconciliation is 6.6 million screening conducted in Gauteng province, to be very, very precise. Where do we do the screening? We do it in the community facilities. We do it in our hospitals. We do it in our primary healthcare institutions. With regard to testing, this is the latest information from the National Health Laboratory Services. You'll see that Gauteng has tested 267,193 178 people. That is 33% of all the national screening as of yesterday, 33%. Now this is something we've been saying to you, that we do 1/3 of all the national testing done. And we are looking forward to a discussion on the new testing strategy. We will have a meeting over the weekend with the Minister of Health to look at the new testing strategy. Our MEC has been discussing with Minister Dr. Mkhize about the constraints we have been having ourselves to look at adjusting our testing strategy. We will be able to brief you on what the outcome of that approach will be. Contact tracing, we are quite effective with contact tracing, even though you would see from time to time we would have unallocated, those unallocated arrive. We may struggle for a few days, but after that we're able to find all of them, and then we trace everybody. Our tracing is 100% across the province, in all the regions. The only time is if we have new cases reported, like last night's cases, we must unbundle that. It takes us a few days to find where exactly the people may be coming from, because when they did their test, they didn't put their full information there. So we often have that, but in general, our tracing is 100%. In terms of the number of people admitted in hospital admissions, our hospital admissions have gone up. It's very important to share this information with the public. They've gone up. We now have 256 people admitted in hospital, 42 in public hospitals and 214 in private hospitals. But those on ventilator is still a few of those. There are 5, 1 in the public and 4 in the private hospital, and others are on oxygen. 36 of them are on oxygen in the intensive care units and in high care units. And then there are others who are less vulnerable. They are in the general wards. Also in there, they are on oxygen. 35 are on oxygen, and then 161 on room A. It is important to note that our number of hospitalizations have doubled. We must share this information with the public. It is a matter of concern. We are watching this very closely. When we have more people admitted in hospital, it would be a matter of immediate concern. And then we check, are they in ICU? Are they on a ventilator? Or are they on oxygen? Or are they just admitted in a general ward? And what's happening with them? So we have a team from the Department of Health that works closely with the clinicians across the province to check what's happening with each of the patients admitted, especially those who are on ventilator. Their condition, whether they're improving or not, is a matter of great concern to us. We monitor that on a daily basis. And when they recover, we are very, very happy. And it is also out of there that we get people passing on. We have given you the number that we are now at 37. I'm going to, the number of available beds hasn't changed. Currently available, it hasn't changed, though this is what we share with you every week in the public and private sector. And the number of those, the additional beds that we are busy with through alternative building technology hasn't changed. There's no need for me to go through that. It's still the same. PPE stock, we continue to build. You can see we have a slight decrease in PPE stock, 11.3 million. Last week it was 11.4 million. It is a function of usage because we don't just keep this PPE. We make sure that it is utilized. Now, if you have to take into account that a lot of PPE has also gone into schools as part of preparation of the reopening of schools, which MEC Lesotho will talk about just now. That's the indication. I am going to, when I conclude after MEC Lesotho talks on, I'm going to talk about some of the issues we are dealing with on PPE, and to just ensure that we handle PPE procurement with utmost integrity. I'll come back to this when I conclude after MEC Lesotho has dealt with the education issues. So let me for now just before MEC Lesotho deals with education, we want to draw your attention to a big milestone we have reached. Our big milestone is that since the national lockdown started, we have now reached 1 million people with food relief in Gauteng province. That is a big milestone for us. It's for the first time in the shortest space of time, in 2 months basically, that we have been able to reach 1 million people to provide them with food relief. And that's a total of 205,000 households. And in each of those households, there's at least up to 5 people. In some, there are more. So it has not been easy. Going forward, there's no guarantee that we will be able to feed as many people, but I want to thank the teams that have worked feverishly in our province, including the teams that worked with NGOs, worked with businesses to help us be able to feed 1 million people in 2 months. Over a very difficult period, especially when the lockdown was biting, level 5, when many people could not go to work. At least at level 3 now, we know there's both the COVID grant as well as the economy reopening. There will be more people who will be able to get their own income. I want to draw your attention to the issue of the homeless. We have continued to feed 3,133 homeless people. We have integrated 31 of those back with their families. We have reunited 31 of those with their families. It's not easy to reunite homeless people with their families. But 31 may sound small, but we are very happy that we have been able to do so in Tshwane, in Sidibeng, in Ekurhuleni, and in Johannesburg. We have also achieved another milestone in this regard with the homeless people. 362 of them have now been taken into rehabilitation centers, and that's those who would have problems with drugs in particular. And you know, you need their consent. You need to work with them you need the agreement to get to be sent into rehab centers. In those rehab centers, we are also equipping them with new skills so that when they get out of a rehab center, they don't go back to the same habits. Some of which we know drugs, sometimes drugs is a function of people's lives being worthless, really. They end up in drugs. But when they have the skills and they are linked to jobs and particular areas of opportunity, they are able to move on with life. So I want to hand over to MEC Lesotho. He's going to do an update, 15 minutes, and then I have 4 slides at the end, which are concluding slides after MEC Lesotho, what our core message going forward is. MEC Lesotho, over to you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Premier, members of the Executive Committee, Council, and Program Director Thabo Masebe. As the Premier has indicated, we are just going to give an update on where we are with the reopening of schools in Gauteng. We can assure the citizens of Gauteng that come the 8th of January, we'll be ready to open our schools in Gauteng. I'm used to January opening schools. 8th of June, that will be ready as Gauteng. There are few areas that we will highlight, schools that are going through difficulties. It's matters beyond our control, but we're working with those schools. But generally, we will be ready. What is our approach? Our approach is what we call safety first, that in each and every school, before the classrooms are open, PPEs must be in our schools. And we'll give you an update of the number of PPEs that we've delivered across the province. Secondly, screening and social distancing. We are utilizing what we call Youth Brigade to execute this mandate. And thirdly, which is very, very important, that each and every school must be cleaned first before learners can come in or our staff members can come in. And the provision of water supply and sanitation. These are our districts in Gauteng in terms of PPEs. Working together with the Department of Health, we can now confidently confirm that there's no single school in Gauteng that does not have PPEs. There's no single district that does not have PPEs, and there's no single office that is assisting us with education that does not have PPEs. And this, we are grateful to the Department of Health that has been executing this mandate brilliantly for us. In terms of cleaning of our schools, you'll recall that we have a partnership with Bidvest, a company that has donated its services to provide cleaning in our schools. They've done all our administrative buildings, that is head office, district offices, teacher centers. We've got 38 of these buildings. All of them are now properly cleaned and they are ready. There is one district, that is Johannesburg East. That's our district office in Sandton. We had to abandon that building because the lease has expired, and we have now opened 3 other offices in Sandton, in Sundown High, Morningside, and Norwood, to service the community of Sandton, Alexander, and the surrounding areas. That office, everything has been done now to ensure that it can also join other offices and start to provide services. Of the 572 schools that we have given to Bidvest to clean, of the 577, 572 have been executed. We are now consiling the remaining ones so that we can reach the 577 and be convinced that everything is fine. There are 1,725 schools that we deposited funds in the banking accounts of the schools so that the schools can clean for themselves. And each and every school have been given a deadline to submit their readiness certificate to confirm that the schools have been cleaned. The deadline is today, and of late we've got 177 that have already submitted those certificates to prove that the schools are clean. Unfortunately, we've got 351 schools that were vandalized, and unfortunately, as I said, in some instances they've been theft and arson. Actually, early hours of yesterday, 15 of our schools were hit at the same time across the province. It's something that worries us. In one school, Nelmapias in Soshanguve, all the learner gadgets in that school were stolen in the early hours of yesterday. Of the 351 schools that were affected, the 6 that were at arson, 3 we have given them mobile classroom each so that they can start with admin purposes. Because, and this is the main problem, because during level 4 and level 5, construction was not allowed. We had to prepare 313 job cards to contractors so that contractors can go to our schools and repair those schools. So they've started that process now because with level 3 construction is allowed. So this you will see, it will affect almost 69 schools that might not be ready to open because the level of vandalism and theft is so severe that you can't risk the life of schools, of learners and our staff members to go there. In total, we've got 38 now new cases that happened recently, but we are working very hard to appoint contractors, 247 contractors to go and assist us to resolve that kind of a challenge. There are also 138 schools without the perimeter fencing. Of those, we have budgeted almost 147 million rand to go and fix the perimeter fencing. The reason why we want to move with speed with 138 schools is because if we don't have fencing, anyone can just walk in a school without being screened, and that will pose as a danger. So we are working very hard, and we've made alternative arrangements where we can't. And some of those particular schools, we are putting them in alternative classrooms so that we don't have problems if we can't deal with that aspect. You will recall that our social distancing philosophy within the schooling environment was to ensure that we bring in grade 7 and grade 12 first, and then use the classrooms, additional classroom for social distancing. We can confirm now that all our schools have finished the mapping. That is, the mapping of indicating where each learner will stay, and also the facilities that are going to utilize, like the school nutrition or the scholar transport, or when they submit their finalized work in terms of assignment, there's proper marking in all our schools. This was a major task, and we're quite excited that we executed this task. It's going to be complicated when we bring additional grades later on, but for grade 7 and grade 12, we are quite convinced that we've managed to work this one properly. We've made the necessary markings. We've now trained 1,800 youth brigades. These are young people that are assisting us in ensuring that everyone that enters our school premises, their details are recorded, and they are scanned, and their temperature is also recorded, and also they ensure that there's social distancing within the class, within the school premises. Thus far, we've deployed 2 per quintal. That is quintal 1, 2, 3. These are township and rural schools. We intend to increase the deployment to 4 per school. Currently, we're at 50% in terms of deployment. This is because we want to start with those schools that will need assistance. Majority of our schools in quintal 4 and quintal 5, they've got additional staff to run with this kind of a mandate. So we really believe that the 50% that we have now can assist us. But this process will continue until we have placed all learners. So all those that have applied to be part of these youth brigades, they must know that we are still waiting, we're still looking for young people that will assist us to conclude this mission. But for now, we've got 1,800 of them that have been placed. The intention is to have 7,000 across. The feeding, we've taken a decision as well on this one that learners that are not part of our feeding program, we're urging their parents to prepare them lunch at home so that the canteen becomes a minimum place. We are also under level 3 and the regulations of selling of food. You'll recall that one of the major part of level 3 in terms of selling of food is that you can't have sit-downs. We are bringing that element within the schooling environment as well. That is why we are urging learners to have prepared lunches so that they can have it in their classroom or where they need to have it. And the canteens, where the school's own canteens, we are urging that there must be a minimum interaction. For now, because we are concluding a contract for our school nutrition program, we've transferred money to schools so that schools can buy food for children for now, for the next 14 days, until we've concluded this contract. It's a huge contract, so we wanted to be sure in terms of the processes that have been followed, but we're quite convinced that it will be concluded as soon as possible. We've seen reports that we are allocating 5 rand per child for school nutrition, and this amount is too little. Actually, we are using economies of scale. Normally, we allocate 2.90 rand per child at the primary school and 3.40 rand per child at the secondary school. So the 5 rand that we are providing now is a huge amount compared to what we are providing. This, we are utilizing economies of scale so that we can manage the numbers. And all those schools that are Section 20 will be assisted. These are the schools that don't have function to manage their own finances. They will be assisted. And all those that have Section 21 mandate, that is those that can manage their own finances, already they've started this process. Of the 7,000 food handlers that we have, we've already trained 5,600. These are the people that are going to assist us with 2 important mandates. The first mandate, because learners will be screened 3 times a day, when they arrive and during break and when they go home. So the second screening, which is during break, will be conducted by voluntary food handlers. And we've been training them. Of the 7,000, 5,600 have passed our training. The rest are still being assisted so that they can go through that program. In terms of transport, we've finalized a major milestone as well here, Premier, Together with the Department of Transport, we've now taken a resolution that everyone who transports children in Gauteng must be registered. And the registration process is starting on Tuesday, next week Tuesday, where private operators and subsidized operators, we will have to register all of them through the Department of Transport. And on the basis of their registration, we'll then provide them with all the relevant support that they need. That is in terms of PPEs and having to ensure that every learner that comes into their cars have masks, and also to provide the relevant sanitizer. So this is a very important milestone because this sector was not regulated, and the Department of Transport has given time and energy to assist us, and they've managed to crack it, and we really appreciate that partnership and that support. We are also dispatching our youth brigades in all the scholar transport buses. These youth brigades will assist us in taking the temperature measures of everyone that gets into the bus, and also ensuring that the social distancing, but most importantly, ensuring that every learner that comes in there, they've got a mask and we don't have challenges. So we are grateful to the Department of Transport. Unfortunately, good people, we have 11 educators that have tested positive in our schools, and one learner that has also tested positive. This is a learner that we reported about last week. Since then, we have 11 additional educators that have tested positive. All the protocols have been executed with the assistance of the Department of Health. We've closed the schools, disinfected the schools, went on to deep cleaning, isolated the educators that were affected, traced those that came into contact with the educators, and finally ensured that they've got all the relevant support. This is one area that we are measuring closely, because if we don't measure it closely, it might affect how we are running our school. So we've also publicized our protocols, and part of the protocols proposes the testing of our educators. The Department of Health is assisting us. We are also negotiating with teacher unions that maybe we must move away from scanning to testing in terms of our educators, and we want to follow the relevant protocol. So we've now tabled a matter for negotiation with teacher unions and all formations that are operating within the education sector to find a way of dealing with this thing. So the case of 11 educators, we are monitoring it very, very closely as a department. These are the areas. I don't want to stigmatize the names of the schools, so I'm not going to mention the name of the schools where these incidents happened, but we'll just put the regions that were affected so that we can protect the schools and also protect the affected individuals. I've indicated that we are working on the protocols, on case management of all those that have been tested positive, and what are the step-by-step protocols, because this is very important within the education space. Who to report, what kind of support that the department will provide, and what role should the school play, and what role should the district play. So we have now finalized these protocols, and we have dispatched these protocols to our schools, including in case a learner tests positive within the school premises. What are the protocols that need to be followed? So with the assistance of the Department of Health, I think this will assist us to manage all these things. These are the screening protocols that we are talking about, what need to happen in case a positive case is reported, and the systems that need to be followed until we have received all relevant education, relevant information. We are also working on what we call home education. This is very, very important, because there are parents that feel that their children must not return on Monday. As Gauteng, we've got 4 choices that we've given to parents. The first choice was class contact, which is what we've just explained now. The second choice is what is called homeschooling. And the third choice is e-learning. We are calling it lockdown learning. And the last choice is schools with special needs. These are learners that are sick and other things. So we've got all these 4 choices that were given to parents to choose. So now we have formally published our processes in terms of homeschooling. where the application forms are and where the application forms can be retrieved. So you go to our website, you'll find the homeschooling processes that need to be followed. We've indicated that the closing date was July. We've extended that closing date to September. And we are strengthening the department that is dealing with homeschooling. We are discussing with the national minister now. The national minister has brought to our attention that we need to have a uniform approach in the sector in terms of lockdown education. We are working with them so that we can have a uniform approach that can suit the entire country, not a province alone. But it's one area that we have put on the table. We'll discuss with the national minister how it's executed. Homeschooling will take grade 1 to grade 12. Homeschooling currently take grade 1 to grade 9. But the lockdown schooling that we are proposing in Gauteng, we want to take grade 1 to grade 12. But because there is a policy gap there, we need to work through the national ministry, and the national ministry is assisting us to work on those matters. We just want to confirm that besides the 67 schools that we've, and I have to mention those schools that we're having difficulties because of various things, we really believe generally we are ready to open our schools on Monday, and the national minister has met with all the MECs yesterday to conclude our preparations and to receive reports from all provinces. I just want to go district by district, the schools that we think will not be ready by Monday, so that parents might be aware. We're also putting the names of these schools on our website. But we are arranging alternative arrangements. We are putting alternative arrangements in terms of either leasing other schools that are not used or churches in the interim until we sort out. You'll see that majority of the schools that will not be opening, 27 of them are in the Sidibeng area. And the Sidibeng area, there's a huge problem of water pressure and sewer. With the problem of water storage, of water and sewer, we really believe that we can't risk those learners. Even though we are putting alternative mechanisms like water tanks, but we really believe until we have a sustainable solution, we can't risk in those areas. We also have a problem of water pressure in Gauteng West. We've got 7 schools there that are going through those difficulties. Those 7 schools as well will publish their names and will ensure that parents are quite aware. In Johannesburg South, we've got 8 schools. And in Ekurhuleni South, that is our Kotaras area, I've got 1 school. In Gauteng East, that is our Bronkhorstspruit area, I've got 1 school there. That's the Hammanskraal area. I think it's a problem of water there. So we are putting an alternative measure to ensure that everyone gets all the relevant support that they need. So in total, we've got 53 schools that have problems of water and sanitation. And these 53 schools, until we put a permanent alternative mechanism, will place learners at alternative schools so that we can conclude whatever that we need to conclude. There are 3 schools that have been damaged badly, that even if we can open, the schools are badly damaged. That is not going to be a conducive environment for learning in those areas. Our teams are also working very hard to conclude those aspects. We want to leave it here, Premier. We've concluded all the training of our principals and our district officials, and we really believe we are ready to welcome our learners on Monday, the 8th of June in Gauteng, Premier. Thank you so much, Premier. Thanks.
Thank you very much, MEC Lesufi. So we are now just giving concluding remarks. The first thing I would like to say to young people in our province, we wish you a happy Youth Month. This is June. Ordinarily, it's a month that we would be interacting with a lot of young people. Normally, we do this at Nasrec, where we have a full week, followed by the week of June 16. So unfortunately, under the difficult conditions of COVID-19 pandemic, we will not this year have those many Youth Month activities. But we note that COVID-19 has imposed the need for behavioral change to minimize the transmission of particularly coronavirus. And young people in our province have been responding in different ways. We want to call on the youth to continue to play their part and take a lead in observing social distance, hygiene, and health measures, including in wearing masks. We see a lot of young people are responding very, very dynamically to this. It is still uneven, but we actually see young people have embraced the new normal. Young people are adapting to this by demonstrating that you can social distance. You can do social distancing without socially disconnecting. They are finding new ways of linking up with their friends, new ways of using technology to take up activism, as young people are people with energy, but they have a deep sense of justice that inspires them. They are also taking up technological platforms to express youth culture, to engage in entertainment. We see that, but also young people in different ways are looking at using technology to explore economic opportunities. So I am very happy that amongst the people we count on, and history will say that in the period of COVID-19, we change the way we're doing things. It's the youth of Gauteng. We are counting on the youth of our province to reimagine a future, to embrace a post-COVID-19 radically transformed society and economy, and indeed to see the problems of today and their challenges as things that can be solved. We would like young people to rise to the occasion to say that we've got too many social problems, but these problems must be overcome. And the future belongs to the youth, and we say to the youth, play your part. So this is my message to the youth of Gauteng today. It is also important to say that as we conclude, our province has managed the pandemic relatively successfully in the past 2.5 months, particularly in the period of the lockdown, and the evidence and the numbers show we have been able to contain and minimize the spread. But there was no illusion that we will completely stop the spread of coronavirus. It was always about, flattening the curve, slowing down the transmission rate, and to the extent possible, delaying the peak, so that it comes when we are much ready, but it also is not a peak that hits us hard at one time. So evidence is there to show, as I said at the beginning, that we moved before the 23rd of May, between the 28th of March and the 23rd of May, we had reduced the number of daily positive cases in our province to a median of 50 cases a day. But we are in a new phase now. We have been able to demonstrate that we are taking every step as we now get into more cases a day. But through this and what's called by the scientists non-pharmaceutical interventions, through the non-pharmaceutical interventions such as social distancing, hygiene, and health measures, including the restrictions about movement, which has helped us to contain the spread of the virus. Through that, we were able to ensure that we slow down the transmission, but not necessarily stop the virus. This has bought us time, and we must say that We have done lots of preparations to prepare for the peak, including we now have in Gauteng Province a committee, advisory committee of scientists, both social and natural scientists, who come from our universities, some of the best brains in our province. We now have that team. It's advising us. I had a conversation with them. It has done remodeling. It is now looking at the latest data about what the trajectory and the progression of COVID-19 in Gauteng Province is going to be. And we're going to be working with them. There's a national ministerial advisory committee. We have our own provincial advisory committee that works with us from our universities to help guide us on the issues of science in how we respond comprehensively. Not, as I say, it's not just the natural scientists, not just the health scientists we have in this team in Gauteng. We also have the social scientists in this team, people who understand the trends, various trends in Gauteng Province very, very well. We have done lots of research to help us respond comprehensively. All scientific models show that the time ahead is difficult. I must come back to this news, as I always do. At the end of every update, I come back to this news. Even the latest models and scenarios say that the time ahead will be very difficult. Starting from June, we can see the numbers are increasing. Getting to July, August, September. August, September would be the peak in Gauteng, according to the modeling team in our province, which also compares notes with national. But we want to say that we are much readier than we could ever be if the peak came much earlier. And we want to say we are continuing to work on a day-to-day basis with the people of our province, various sectors of society, sectors in the economic sectors, the religious sector, women, young people, including also now we're working also with the creative industries and the sports, because various sectors are saying level 3 means this for us. We're saying as we open, and the scientists were saying there's no way you can stay at level 4 or level 5 forever. It do not produce anything better. That's what the scientists were saying in their modeling. There's no way you can stay there forever. But as we are in level 3 now, we would like to ensure that we put in place all these non-pharmaceutical interventions. And of course, we know that parts of the regulations are being attended to. There's been a court case. National government is appealing the decisions there that we did. But from a point of view of social distancing, wearing of masks, ensuring that workplaces, public spaces, all of them observe these measures. We are continuing to do this in our province, and we hope we will over the next 2 months, working with all these sectors, ride this difficult time ahead with a lot of holding of hands. We are going to do this together. We have done this together. We have been able to do what we have done in Gauteng together. We will go through the most difficult time, what I call the eye of the storm. We will go through this together again, including working with the private sector hospitals. We have signed an MOU with them now on they making available their beds. We're going to be dealing with this together. We have been able to achieve a lot. The number of deaths in our province is still relatively low. We have been able to achieve all these things together without thinking that it is just government. I want to also commend our health workers. We have now lost 2 nurses. I want to say that for the first time since the start of the pandemic, we've now lost 2 nurses, our frontline health workers. 2 of the nurses have passed on, and MEC Masuku will also say something in dealing with questions about that. Having said that, we have also been, as we were preparing our public health system, We have been dealing with refurbishing our health facilities. I want to repeat that, so that these health facilities are ready beyond COVID-19. We have been investing significantly in jacking up our infrastructure. We have also been recruiting more health workers. We have recruited more professionals. Again, it's part of getting ready for the peak. We have also been buying PPE stock. As we are doing those things and preparing various places, workplaces, public transport systems, schools now, as MEC Lesufi have indicated, we know that this coming Sunday, places of worship will be an area of focus. We are continuing to talk with the religious leaders, the faith-based leaders in our province, that those that say they are going to open needs to make sure that they have all the measures in place. But we have also been promoting localization, local manufacturing of PPE in Gauteng. It is an important area of policy. We have been promoting that the local entrepreneurs, particularly those previously excluded from the mainstream of the economy, must get opportunities as we procure PPE. And I'm happy to report that 80% of all procurement on PPE has been by companies that are black-owned, owned by black people, owned by women in this regard. So 80% of procurement of PPE has been principally in line with our policy of economic empowerment of the previously disadvantaged. But I want to insist also that we have been ensuring, we have been taking steps to ensure that there's clean and prudent management of the procurement process, to ensure that there's no corruption happening with the procurement of PPE in particular, and with the construction infrastructure. And for that reason, which is my concluding slide here, as part of these measures to ensure that we safeguard the interests of government and public resources, a part of risk management included us ensuring that the Gauteng Treasury, through the Gauteng Audit Services, undertakes regular review of all major procurement processes of PPE in Gauteng. So our Treasury has got the Gauteng Audit Services, which is an outfit that does internal audit, and it has been doing that. All contracts related, all procurement processes related to PPE, including food and infrastructure, has been under scrutiny. That's a safeguard. Continuously ensure that you examine this and check if the procurement process is adhered to. I also want to say to you that in Gauteng province, we have also been insisting, I started this in the in the 6th administration, that all senior managers must be vetted. HODs and CFOs, they are in charge of very important decisions, especially financial decisions. They must be beyond reproach. And we have vetted, a lot of our HODs were vetted last year, and those who didn't pass vetting were not reappointed in Gauteng province, definitely were not reappointed. But we've also been emphasizing that we want the CFOs as well, the chief financial officers, to also be vetted, because we want to ensure people who make decisions on procurement have utmost integrity. I can confirm that there have been cases where we identified fraud, corruption, and maladministration. It has been detected by our Gauteng Audit Office services. Has been doing that, and some of those, immediately when that is the case, a forensic probe is put in place, and then people who are identified who have done something wrong in that regard are put through a disciplinary process. And there are several disciplinary processes that are underway as I speak, out of wrongdoing identified by various state institutions. The SIU is one of those state institutions. State security agency is one of those state institutions. Gauteng Audit Services is one of those institutions that would have helped us to identify any wrongdoing in Gauteng province. I also want to say that there is a trend that when officials have to go through disciplinary processes, after these things have been identified that There are questions they must answer. There are officials who decide that they want to resign, and they think when they have resigned, the case is over. I say to them, that time is over. You resign from government because there's an investigation or you are facing a disciplinary process. The case is not over. You still have a case to answer. And because we can't discipline you when you no longer work for government, we now, what we are doing, working with the Special Investigation Unit, we are opening criminal cases where there is a clear criminal case that someone has to answer and they've resigned from government. So I want to send a message out there to officials of government. That time that you think if there are issues, if our treasury has identified that there are certain things that has gone wrong and you think the way to save yourself is to resign, that time is over. The case will follow you, and these cases are following any of our officials that are identified so that they can be criminally charged, because they can't run away by thinking that they will resign. Having said that, as a result of this enhanced anti-corruption measures and anti-corruption crackdown, and this work being done by the provincial government very closely with the Special Investigation Unit, that's a national unit that has been that has seconded people to work with the Gauteng Provincial Government. As a result of this crackdown, we have noticed in the last few days that there is a typical Bell Pottinger type of smear campaign. I want to repeat. As a result of our crackdown on various areas in our provincial government, crackdown on corruption, we have noticed that there is emerging a Bell Pottinger type of smear campaign, which has been launched by what we regard essentially as the beneficiaries and the forces of corruption, who think they can intimidate, silence, or even destroy those who are opposed to corrupt deals in the Gauteng provincial government. And their mantra is, if they can't buy you, they must destroy you. If you can't buy us, you must destroy us. I want to send a strong message to the corrupt elements out there, including those they work with, who are their agents in our government. My message is that your smear campaign will not succeed, and it will not stop us from fighting corruption. And we are coming for every contract, for every department, for every area where we have put in place. These things are happening right now, where we have put in place an investigation, where an investigation has found out that someone must face a criminal court case. These things are happening now. We know as this is happening, there is a pushback. And that pushback is this smear campaign about trying to go around using tricks and lies, particularly perpetrated. This has been directed at myself as the Premier and MEC Masuku. It's out there in the social media. There's those tweets that are out there to try and link us with people we don't know, people we have never met in our lives. Try and link us with those people, including a chap called Hamilton Ndlovu, who we have never met. Me, I've never met the guy. MEC Masuku has never met the guy. And we know this is part of a well-orchestrated strategy to attack the attackers, basically. We know that strategy. Attack the attackers so that they must be shaken. We will not be shaken. And I want to assure those involved in this, the one good thing is that we have also verified all the contracts that have been done on PPE. And MEC Masuku will deal with that. It's his area of work. We are very happy that there is nothing that can be associated with, personally with me or MEC Masuku as the MEC for Health, for having given a contract to a certain Hamilton and Ndlovu in Gauteng. It hasn't happened. The reason we know this is because we know those who think they can get contracts through nefarious means. I think the way to do that is to try and discredit those who want us to empower black people cleanly, ethically, without deals on the sides. So we would love, definitely, to continue to empower black companies. That's why I said earlier on, 80% of PPE is procured from black companies. We want to do that, but it must be clean. No dirty deals, no brown envelopes. And it must be people who can prove that they can do the job. They are not fronting. That's what we will continue to insist. It must be township businesses. It must be black businesses. It must be businesses owned by women, particularly black women. It must be business, but it must also be businesses that can manufacture a lot. We want this PPE to be locally manufactured. That's what we are insisting on. And if there's anyone who think that they will try to intimidate us, they will go to jail before they kill us. We are very, very firm on that. So thank you so much for the opportunity to brief you today. We are ready to take questions.
All right, let's take questions. Yeah, I see a hand there. Yeah, it is on.
Yeah. Mine is directed probably.
Just identify yourself.
It's Ndaedzo from Power FM. A quick one to, in the absence of the Economic Development MEC, I would perhaps think that the Premier would answer this one. What is the impact of the sale of alcohol on the economy since the resumption of sale of alcohol? And to MEC Faith Mazibuko, same thing on alcohol. What has the impact been, be it GBV, accidents on the road, etc.? And MEC Masuku, did you get any indication also on the sale of alcohol on maybe the burden that trauma units are experiencing because of alcohol-related incidences? MEC Lusufi, you mentioned those schools that won't reopen, but I didn't get a sense of what parents of learners from those schools need to do with only 2 days left before the schools open. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do we have another question? Where's the mic? Is that all? Okay. I have a few here that I'm going to read out. One is from Nozintombi Mia from SABC TV News. And the question says, doctors and nurses at Far East Rand Hospital have no safe place to stay during lunch time because of the fire that gutted the main doctors' quarters there. The CEO has allegedly told the doctors that they should stay in their cars during lunch breaks. What is being done there to assist the frontline workers in getting a safe and secure place to rest during calls? Then the next question is from, again, the SABC, but from Wisani Makubele. One, what do we attribute the rise in positive cases in the past 7 days? Then the second question, again from Wisani, how many health workers have contracted coronavirus in the province? And how are you dealing with these cases in public hospitals? And are you monitoring the same hospitals, the same situation in private hospitals? Then there's a question from Khomotso Mudisani from Eyewitness News. The first question is with regard to the Mponeng mine. The mine is slowly starting production, but the number of cases in places around the mine continues to rise. Are you comfortable with the reopening of the mine? The second question from Khomotso is, could you please shed light on the new COVID-19 hospital being built in Midrand? What is the capacity? How much is government going to spend on this, and when will it be ready? Okay, that's all we have. MECs, we'll start. MEC Masugu. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, members of the media and fellow South Africans. I think the issue of alcohol is of great concern, you know, generally. I think there's nothing positive that actually emanates from alcohol. And we also very concerned about the loosening of the regulations on the usage and the purchasing of alcohol. And we have seen an upsurge of numbers in our casualty units, you know, particularly the trauma units, starting from Monday when the regulations were actually loosened up. But it is a conversation that we should have as a society, you know, in general. I think outside the regulations themselves, but as a society, is just to engage on how we can be able to enjoy and be happy without, in actual fact, hating ourselves and abusing alcohol. And there is, I think, MEC Mazibuko will address the issue of GPV, because everything that comes with alcohol has got trauma, incidences increase, GPV increase, and this is of our great concern. We know that most of our ICU beds, because the beds won't lay empty, you know, going forward, they would have to be having to accommodate patients. So if there is a trauma unit patient, we will occupy that ICU bed, and we might have competing needs and demands in that regard. I've received the issue on the Far East Rand. We'll look at it, but as a department, we have committed ourselves in a program called EVP since we started the term of office, which is basically looking at making sure that all our healthcare workers are well taken care of, and they do have places which are safe for them to relax and also for them to be able to eat their, which will have their meals during work. And this is a work that we are continuously doing and we are continuously improving. So it's not necessarily an issue that happens under lockdown, but it's something that we have been doing, and we'll follow up the matter on Far East Rand to that regard. And I think it's something that we have to put our eye on. And on we sign, I think the numbers as of yesterday were around 205 of confirmed healthcare workers in the employ of Gauteng Department of Health. And these are the numbers that are actually concerning because they continue to rise. And it also relates to a number of things, because our healthcare workers do stay in communities, and they do stay in the townships, and they do stay where the infection is also, raging on. So there are a number of factors that we are, looking at to try to monitor and correct that aspect, particularly the correct usage of PPE, appropriate usage of PPE, and also general availability of actually PPE. But it's also of great concern that we are actually worried about. The Premier has indicated now that we do have confirmed cases of 2 healthcare workers who have passed on in the space of this week, and it's something that we are very much sad on, and we are looking at reports and also to understand where could have situations went wrong, if there were any instances in that regard. We are worried generally about the mines reopening. I think it's the same sentiments that we shared with you last week, that the mining area is a big problem, and we are continuously monitoring and working with them to make sure that screening and testing does happen. And we're also concerned that most of the mine workers, some of them do stay within the communities, and in most instances in informal settlements. And where we have been having the problem, particularly the Mponeng mine, We have done a whole lot of activation just around Kokosi area and Wedela in making sure that we do enough tracing and testing and screening in that area. And we are quite confident with the work that we have been doing that there will be a management and a slowing down of the transmission of the virus. I'm not sure about the hospital in Midrand. Maybe the question should be directed to the person who gave you the information. In our plans, we don't have any plan to build a hospital in Midrand, and we are not saying that there wouldn't be any other plan to build other extra capacity in other spaces. We have, as a Gauteng provincial government, confirmed that we are going to be putting more beds in Nasrec and also working with BMW and Nissan to put up beds around actually Roslyn. And I think we have, maybe as a last point, Premier, just to address the issue of everything. I think we have received a couple of queries, media queries pertaining the CFO who have resigned. We do have to indicate to you that yes, as the MEC, I got a report from the HOD that the CFO of the department has resigned, and as a department, we are not having any policy to stand in front or to stand in front of anyone who wants to pursue greener pastures, and the process of a handover and everything has been arranged, and it has been dealt with by the department. And currently, we do have an acting CFO, Mr. Lale, who has been our Chief Director Budget, and he is taking care of all what is actually, like happening. But it's important that from the command center aspect, that all our processes, we have, been able to call for a clean, transparent processes. Hence, we instituted from our own selves in terms of donations that we receive for food security and donations that we receive for the assistance with the fight against the pandemic, and all the other processes we have through GAS, which is our auditing service, been able to go through that process to make sure that the processes are well and are within the PFMA and within the regulations issued by Treasury. But I think the major issue is that we are committed to a transparent and a corruption-free process, and we are going to continuously, not to wait after the pandemic, that we then institute some of this audit, but we are going to continuously be in the process of cleaning up our processes and correcting them. And if there are errors that would have been committed, they will be corrected. If there are infringes of the law, we would have actually have to deal with it in that respect. And I think in that regard, we are saying that we are aware of the smear campaign, and we, like generally they said, lies have got short legs, and it will generally reveal itself as it goes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions in relation to utshwala. Maybe we need through the MEC for Moroka Swallows. He's passionate about the problems of banning alcohol. He's a better champion. Yes. On crashes that we have received since alcohol was allowed on Monday, so far we've experienced 18 fatalities. And people have been tested and others were arrested on the spot. Others, batholakale nabo utshwala eyinqoleni zabo. During lockdown, we were getting more of imbamba. Now we are getting better, the other chwala now. And at least with Mbamba besi chita yabona. So this one, we arrest you together with your alcohol. At least that's evidence that we have to take umangabu yo being heleli manchi. And pedestrians together with motor vehicles were also involved in these fatalities. And we must urge our young people, when we keep on saying don't drink and drive, we truly are requesting you not to do that. The ministers indicated, buy your alcohol, or president indicated that buy your alcohol and go drink at home. And it's not a time for get together. It means one. Others will say it's not possible to drink alone, but it is possible. Utatela masavana kuna uqeda nje uwanatha bese uyikhwelele embhedeni uyalala. You'll save yourself from experiencing many problems. Even those that are going to funerals, we wish to discourage them from having after tears. I'm sure with the statistics that were released by Premier, some of them were actually infected in Mabuban in just one funeral that was held on Tuesday. By yesterday, about 8 cases have been identified. So we wish also to discourage you. If you go to a funeral, hambuzimbozile ngezifonyo zakho, and then, if possible, avoid going to a graveyard. Let's allow the family to grieve and to mourn. And going back, families have been informed, prepare takeaways, so that then you just take your takeaway food and go home, and really, really let's protect ourselves. Let's not have after tears. And you see, bottle stores are open between Monday and Thursday. So we don't expect any alcohol from today, naksasa, na Sunday. And don't say we are being fair, we are unfair. Tolakala uphethe utshwala noma ile eneken noma ile khasilaga ethi 0.00 okusalayo utshwala. Whether you know zero ngaphakathi, where have you seen a zero alcohol? Does not exist anywhere. Okusala yenziwa ngemalt. So you must not be found. Now laba ababuthengisayo, there are supermarkets that also sell this 0.00. You ngcono this weekend, because police find you, they are not going to negotiate. Bazokuthathela ukuthi uphethe utshwala noma ku 0.03. If can put it is 0.03, so it means there is still alcohol inside. So ningasishaya noma sifunde phansi kwa pass 1 pass all siyakwazi uyifunde English. On cases of GBV that were reported since Monday, yay, abantu base Gauteng niyanqindana man. Uphuma silwe mningi too much. And I know ukuthi once umuntu enathile kancane uzizwe usondo nzima uba namandla too much. Uyantshela manje ngizonishaya nonke and ngeke nimphikise. On common assaults, we experienced 124 assaults in just one day, which was Monday. So ushuthi by the time kushaya Wednesday, Thursday, Friday angifuna nokunika seziwes. And then on assault GBH, which is a grievous bodily harm, kusho ukuthi lo bamshaye wayogcina esibhedlele. Nanikhumbula natsakhulu kwakuthiwa kunojongidi bamphula umhlathi wayongena esibhedlele eBarakwana. Nakuzaba nale slogan esidumile sithi Barakwana isibhedlele esikhulu. So those on assault GBH was standing at 76. So people banqindene too much. Baze bayovuswa ngama-drip esibhedlele. And this takes up beds that have actually been earmarked for COVID treatment. On sexual offenses, we saw an increase of about 17 cases that were reported. So amaphoyisa abe busy ngapha ke ukayimulawo ngapha abantu bayanqindana. On rape, we saw 16 cases that were reported. On sexual assault and attempted, we only saw 1 attempt. So we wish to urge our people to say, please let's take care of ourselves. Nasasipuzile, let's make sure that we protect ourselves and we save ourselves. Those were the only few questions. Ebesisitholile. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Thank you so much for the questions that were asked. In terms of the 69 schools that we have indicated that it will be very difficult to reopen them, we're working very hard. Actually, the number I'm told now by our HOD that has been reduced to 53. So we're trying to push as much as possible. But it's not the end of schooling. We are arranging alternative placement, either in other schools or areas where we can utilize their facilities, either churches and other things, until we put some permanent measures. So it's not a permanent closure. It's that they might not be ready only from Monday, but maybe by the end of the week, would have put alternative system purely because construction was not allowed in the previous level, so it's just been allowed now. So we've issued procurement requests. People have responded to those procurement requests. But in the area of Sidibeng, which is the VAL, unfortunately, there are what we call business forums, who in most instances don't apply for procurement opportunities, but anyone who have applied for procurement opportunities, when they come there, they are chased away. Or people want to take over those procurement opportunities. So with the law enforcement agencies, we really believe that it will assist us to deal with those issues. Nosipo raised about Elsent schools. We must emphasize, and I think I want to explain it clearly so that parents with learners with special needs can understand how these schools will reopen. From Monday, that is the 8th of June, only learners with special needs that are attending School of Skills, Year 4, that is the final Year 4, those learners will be allowed to come back to school on the 8th of August. But learners with severe intellectual disabilities in grade R1, 2, 3, and 6, and learners with severe profound intellectual disabilities in grade 1 and 3 will only come back on the 6th of July. I want to repeat that, which is a very important aspect. Learners with severe intellectual disabilities in grade R, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 6, as well as learners with severe profound intellectual disabilities in grade 1 to grade 3 will only come back on the 6th of July, 2020. But learners that are attending Skills Year 4 or School of Skills Year 4 are the only one that will be allowed to come on Monday. But we are also concluding protocols for schools with special needs, because there are some schools, for example, School of Autism. The teacher needs to feed the learner. The teacher needs to assist the learner to stand up. The teacher needs to provide guidance for that learner. There, the touching element is not there. There must be a form of touching in that sector. So we are putting up new PPEs for them, the one that are used by medical practitioners within that aspect. So there's been a delay with those PPEs, but because they are coming at a later stage, we really believe by the time they arrive, the PPEs arrive, it will be before the 6th of July so that we can provide support and guidance. So we are fine-tuning the safety protocols in those schools so that learners that need assistance might not be left unattended because teachers say we're told not to touch and then leave learners that need assistance and they're left unattended. So we're working on those protocols. I think the team have finalized draft 3. we remain hopeful by the time we go to draft 4, we'll be ready to publish those guidelines so that the educators can be assisted. Thank you so much.
I just want to conclude by saying that we are worried about the bed spaces that we had created over the last few months being taken over by, in trauma units, being taken over by people who would be admitted in our hospitals as a result of violence associated with alcohol. Just on Monday, the South African Police Service reported to me on Tuesday that on Monday alone, there were 124 people who were admitted in our various facilities overnight as a result of assault and violence and stab wounds linked to alcohol. Just on the day that the sale of alcohol opened, that's the 1st of June, 124 people were admitted in our health facilities as a result of stab wounds, in some instances stab wounds, violence related to fighting that stemmed out of alcohol. Obviously, those people would have also come there drunk themselves. A few of them that day were also motor vehicle accidents of people who were drunk. So we are very concerned. Just from a health perspective, those trauma beds would have been beds that we need. We are moving into a period where we are going to need every bed space we will need. And the last thing we want to be preoccupied with is that the beds that we would have needed to put in people who are COVID positive, who need medical attention, that those beds are taken over by people who would essentially fight because they have gone too far with their limits. I also want to say to the media that, to you here, that our Treasury Department has checked if any tender has been awarded to a certain Hamilton Ndlovu, who the Twitter smear campaign says bought me a Jeep because we gave him a tender. Our Treasury has found out there's no PPE tender given to any Hamilton Ndlovu. And I want to emphasize that this is not going to sidetrack us from the battle. If those who thought by throwing this smear campaign and writing these messages, they are going to shake us and we will not focus on doing the right things. In fact, they have emboldened us. So there's no tender. We don't know any Hamilton Ndlovu. But we understand why this was created, this smear campaign. It will not succeed. Thank you so much for today's session. We really, really appreciate that. We are ready to start school on Monday with our children. We look forward to accompanying them to school. Our Provincial Executive Committee will be all over Gauteng. The MECs will be all over Gauteng to ensure that the school starts well on Monday. Thank you so much.